Shall we?
Welcome to the Release the Snyder Cut Round Table, organized by RT Snyder Cut. We are coming together from around the world. We're going to introduce ourselves first and tell you how we fit in the Release the Snyder Cut movement. And then we're going to talk about things from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman that we love and that we've appreciated. And we want to see how those things connect from Man of Steel BVS into Zack Snyder's Justice League. We're also going to share a bit about how we see the comic books connecting to and inspiring Zack Snyder's work in the DCEU. So let's go ahead and get started by going around the round table to introduce ourselves and share out about our relationship with the Release the Snyder Cut movement. And Omesh, I think I'm going to throw it off to you first.
Hi there, my name is Omesh. I'm from South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. I'm a photographer and I do a few video editing projects as well. I'm busy writing a couple of scripts. And I would love to see Zack Snyder's Justice League, because the film that we got in November was not exactly Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was something else. I'm very excited that the film is going to be coming out in whatever form it comes out in. That's me.
And have you been involved in the Release the Snyder Cut movement? I know you got on board pretty early on.
Yeah, I think it was in January or February of 2018, when I think it was Itzmo organized to do the photograph in front of the Warner Brothers studios with all the cosplayers. That was, I think it was in Feb in 2018, so about a month or so after the release of the film. Been a long journey, but we are here now.
Yeah, great.
Indeed, yeah.
Hamad, how about you?
My name is Hamad Al-Mansouri. I come from Qatar. And, I've basically been involved with the Snyder Cut movement since its first inception, basically. Basically, after a week, after seeing the Justice League theatrical, a week later, after all the reality started settling in and realizing what the hell is going on, that's when I, started finding people who are like-minded, and pretty much got involved with every single campaign since the writing, the phone calls, every single major banner event I took part in. And obviously, why I want to see the Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I love Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Batman v Superman is my favorite movie of all time, and I have to see its sequel. So I'll do anything possible to get it. And we got it.
Awesome. Alessandro.
So I'm Alessandro. I'm a co-host of Justice League Universe podcast. Let me just say, get this off my chest. I want to just thank Hamad for all he's contributed. A lot of the movement's success is due in part to him and his contributions. So I just want to thank him. We managed to do a lot thanks to him. And I think that had a huge impact. I want to see the Snyder Cut because similarly, Batman v Superman is my favorite movie. It blew my mind. It changed my life. And I so desperately want to see the sequel. I love these characters and I grew up with them, and the gravity in which Zack Snyder has handled them is just so amazing to me, and I want to see more of that. And I want to see, more importantly, the movie that we were promised, that we were supposed to get. And as far as the movement, I was pushing back on Justice League ever since I started hearing, Joss Whedon coming in and even before that, when they were saying that there was going to be accelerated optimism and hope, I knew something was fishy there. But yeah, when I saw Fiona tweet the video highlighting all the hashtags, I was way on board and have been contributing
to, you know, nearly every single event and campaign, even organizing a few of my own. Probably my biggest contributions were to Project Comic-Con. I proposed the billboard, spearheaded that whole thing, and I was the treasurer of it. And, I helped organize it and booked a few of the ads. So, and then recently some Twitter events. But yeah, I've been fighting as hard as I can to get this film. So it's fantastic that we finally have some relief. My anxiety has been through the roof for the past few years, and it's just sense of elation that we're finally getting it.
Yeah, it's really paying off. It's great to see that happening. I'm Sam Otten, so thanks everybody for watching, and I'm a creator and co-host with Alessandro on the Justice League Universe podcast. And yeah, it's similar to what everybody's saying here. I mean, my desire for Zack Snyder's Justice League really comes from Man of Steel, and then was really raised with BVS. I think for me, BVS is my second favorite film of all time, which some people might be surprised to hear, but The Big Lebowski still has this sort of special spot in my heart. But right under that is Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. But yeah, just especially, so I got a Superman shirt on. I've been a Superman fan for quite a while, and I thought I really loved Superman just from childhood onward in lots of different incarnations. But Man of Steel just like took that to a whole new place. Like, oh wow, I thought I loved Superman before. I like love him even more now, and he went to places that I hadn't even seen before in terms of some of the philosophies and just causing me to think about things in my own life and stuff. And then BVS raising the bar again and sort of bringing in some of these deep themes that we've talked a lot about on Justice League Universe podcast. So yeah, especially with Superman, I want to see where Superman goes and how he actually is kind of reborn in Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's kind of my most important thing that I'm looking forward to. But it's really all of it, like you're saying, about just seeing the actual intended follow-up, or at least something that has Zack Snyder's approval, and Chris Terrio hopefully back involved. To me, that's like very important. With Justice League, I've tried not to spend my energy bashing the theatrical version of Justice League. And there are some things in it that I actually like and I can enjoy, and my kids enjoy it. I've been trying more to focus my energy on the great stuff that hopefully is in Zack Snyder's Justice League and that I'm confident is in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I've been trying to take like the positive angle of what we want to see rather than like bashing the stuff that we did get. But it is frustrating to just all of that happen. We don't need to talk about all of that, but looking forward to it very much. Release the Snyder Cut. I've used the hashtag, a lot. I've tried to join in the events when I could. I've tried to retweet like a diverse, group of voices of people involved in the movement. I did write some letters to Warner Brothers and AT&T, and I think those helped, the letter writing campaigns, because those were cited like by AT&T when they're saying like, yeah, these letters keep coming to us for years, One of the fun things I did was my wife and I visited Los Angeles, and so on Ventura Beach, I actually wrote out in the sand, released the Snyder Cut, took a picture of it with like Los Angeles in the background. That was kind of fun. And then I'm not admitting anything, but I may or may not have written Release the Snyder Cut in the Warner Brothers bathrooms when I was at the Warner Brothers tour. It may have happened. I don't know. I can't say for sure. But, it's been fun to see it all happening. And then the other thing that Alessandro and Omesh and actually lots of us have been trying to do is just share the appreciation of Man of Steel and BVS as a way to say, like, we would love to see the same kind of thing in Justice League. Like, look at the depth, look at the character development, look at these, interesting dynamics that are explored thematically, and then we want to see that continued. So by sharing the love that we have here for like Batman v Superman, I think that helps the cause, because it shows there's passion. There's passion in the fan base of Man of Steel and BVS, and that's what Warner Brothers and AT&T should continue forward. So I think that's good. But all right, let's get into our main discussion, which is we want to take that passion for Man of Steel and BVS, and we want to see how that might continue into Justice League. So the question that we sort of brought to this roundtable is this question of what do we want to see continued from Man of Steel BVS into Zack Snyder's Justice League. So let's start by talking about some characters. Is there character development or some character arcs that you think could be continued and picked up in Zack Snyder's Justice League? What do people think about that?
I want to see just the same style he had with the Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. How he portrayed in Man of Steel, how he portrayed Clark Kent, and how in BVS he portrayed Bruce Wayne, and and Batman. Like it's just so there's that realism in it, and like just the way he challenges the audience. I just wanted to see it continued into his Justice League. I want to be challenged the way I see Flash and Cyborg and the rest of the Justice League. The same way I felt like he was picking my brain when I was watching Batman being, Batman in his at the bottom of his in his career, and how like Clark Kent was just questioning his existence in this world. I'm 100% sure that's what he's going for. I hope he sticks to that. I just really hope he sticks to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to talk about it. Like, Batman and Bruce Wayne in BVS actually, perturbed some people or offended some people about that characterization, but that's because he was pushing the character and exploring a darker, deeper side of it. And when you do that, some people are not going to be comfortable with it. Same with Superman in Man of Steel, and in BVS, people are like, I don't really like that he made Superman have to make that choice or have to deal with these, tensions and dilemmas. But that's what we like about it. We like that he actually is taking these characters seriously enough that he's putting them in tricky situations or things that are unclear, and then that helps us actually learn more about the character. So I agree. Like, we want to see that maybe with some of the other Justice League members, that same kind of exploration.
And I think a big element of the Bruce Wayne Batman aspect is his experiencing loss and how he responds to that. And one thing that I'm really looking forward to is seeing Superman and seeing how is sort of his birth, death, and then rebirth. And presumably down the road, his intention was to have Superman also experience loss, and it would have been really interesting had he been able to finish his story to see how Superman reacts to loss and fear. And Zach has already hinted at how he would succumb to the anti-life equation. So I think having Bruce and Batman experience that in Batman v Superman was an important bedrock for that future aspect and sort of parallel that he would have explored with Superman.
Yeah, so imagine instead of just a world's finest adventure where Superman and Batman just fly off somewhere and save something, but instead it could be Bruce Wayne has dealt with this kind of loss, and feelings of failure, and we saw that in BVS. And now in the future of Zack Snyder's story, Superman may be dealing with failure, dealing with loss. But now those two, the world's finest, they can actually have this meaningful sort of connection with each other because they've both been there. Yeah, that would be really cool. We might be able to see something along those lines.
Yeah, and in the comics, Superman did go through that whole death, and then the funeral for a friend and the return of Superman. So there is that sort of, 3-part arc that I think would have been interesting to finally see in Justice League. My understanding is that it was going to be 5 movies overall, but if we don't get that, at least some of the story arcs would have resolved in Justice League, presumably. So it would have had some sort of 3-movie arc existing.
Yeah, Omesh, is there some characters that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, I've heard that Cyborg is supposed to be the heart of the film. And so that's very intriguing for me because he is like all of the other, the Trinity, they sort of, a number of the other DCEU characters are portrayed as being are presented as being a bridge, Wonder Woman is a bridge between
between two worlds, like Themyscira and the world of man. Yep.
Yeah, and Aquaman, and similarly with Clark.
Right.
And so Cyborg is part apocalyptian and part human, and he's like Superman. He's going to be a death and rebirth, and there's also these elements of there's a lot of references to the Wizard of Oz in Batman v Superman. And
Sure.
So Cyborg would be like a Tin Man who struggles with he doesn't have a heart. So I think that Wonder Woman and his relationship will be important, because Wonder Woman is obviously like a symbol of love and compassion and humanity. And so I think it'd be very interesting to see the dynamics that comes out of that interaction, you know?
Yeah, that's great too,
definitely.
to think about the Tin Man connection and not having a heart for Cyborg, but then for us to know that Cyborg is kind of the heart of the film. So it might have been an arc for Cyborg to sort of, feel like a monster or something, or feel like I'm missing something because of what's happened to me. But then by the end to realize, like, no, I still can have these relationships and they still see the humanity in me. So the heart kind of coming out by the end.
And also, Cyborg is also going to be a bit like Batman, because I think he's going to lose both of his parents in the film. So he's a bit like Clark. He's a bit like Batman as well. And
Sure.
I think Wonder Woman is going to be a very important character to support him, and to help sort of, just to be a support structure for him. So I'm very keen to see how that all plays out.
And we're going to talk about themes a bit later, but right now that's making me think of this theme of, being stronger together, and that by, joining unities and collaborations, that's actually stronger. That's a way that you can defeat challenges or, things. And so I like how you're saying that the characters, them coming together, they might be able to lend the support to each other to help them get over whatever it is they're dealing with. And so to me, that's like the makings of a good film that really goes somewhere instead of just like an action romp or something.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big aspect of what Zach was going for, especially because Batman v Superman was a lot about division. So to go into unifying and unity, I think is a nice contrast and juxtaposition to Batman v Superman.
Mm-hmm. I'm really curious for everybody what you think about, or what you're looking forward to from Superman and Lois. Because for me in Man of Steel and BVS, I love a lot of things about the films, but one of the things I really love is Superman and Lois, their relationship. The way that they're kind of on equal footing and they each need each other and they each save each other in different ways. And Lois's, investigations always being like an important part of the actual plot of the film and stuff. So what are you guys hoping to see in terms of going into Justice League, in terms of Superman, Lois, that sort of thing?
Isn't it amazing that, I don't know, I haven't seen this kind of relationship in any iteration before, like the Superman Lois Lane that we see in the Man of Steel and BVS. I haven't seen that in the previous movies or previous TV. I always thought the dynamics was always like, Lois always is in need of Superman. I might be wrong. Maybe there's some TV series I missed, the Superman, or the movies that I didn't pick up on. But I don't remember seeing that ever. That they're actually in equal footing. That's most of the time Superman needs Lois, and this is such a refreshing take that actually makes me more interested in a Superman character. So I hope that continues on.
I think that has a lot to do with the timing of when the films come out, because in the comics, that's sort of come up quite a bit, and because comics come out pretty regularly, they're able to, the times more easily. Whereas films, they take so long to come out. And so we haven't had too many Superman films. So I agree with you. It's nice to see that dynamic. And I also think that she's going to play an important role in the Snyder Cut. I believe, there were at least rumors that, at first, they sort of touched it on the theatrical version, but I think it's going to play a bigger role in which Lois sort of grounds Superman back to his humanity, because my understanding is that he sort of loses his mind and is can't control himself, and sort of similar to how Martha, when Clark is a child, says, "Listen to the sound of my voice," and sort of grounds him. I think Lois is going to play that same role in the Snyder Cut, because, she is his world, and she basically is his connection to humanity.
Yeah, so they do have that in the theatrical version, but in just a very clunky way that doesn't really ring true. To me, that one way in which I will sort of bash the theatrical version is that I thought the relationship between Superman and Lois just was confusing to me. And like for somebody who really has watched and paid attention to Man of Steel and BVS, I felt like they were just making up new stuff and new dynamics between them that to me did not really feel authentic to what they had done and what they had been to each other, like in the previous films. I felt like they just sort of threw them together, like, yeah, they'll just kind of embrace and then they'll say some lines. But I'm like, it just to me didn't feel like the sequel to BVS, or it didn't feel like the conclusion of the way that they had handled Lois, like all the way along. And just kind of making her like just sort of sad and like depressed in a very superficial kind of way. And then she just kind of hugs him in a superficial kind of way, and then it was done. I don't know exactly what I want, but I definitely want a redo of the sort of Clark Lois, relationship.
She seems sort of like a tool for comic relief. The itchy line and you smell nice, and even the thirsty comment with Martha, awful. But yeah, she seemed more like comic relief in the theatrical cut.
It felt like whatever the relationship they made in the theatrical cut is based on certain expectations, or like a view of what everyone thinks that a Superman and Lois relationship would be from outside, like even from the outsider point of view. I think that's what they like horribly tried to do.
Sure, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, in BVS, you've got Lois is you are my world, and Lois is the key.
Right.
It's like she's an important character in this universe. She shouldn't be like, and she's a serious character. She's not a comic relief character in any of the other films. So it's like it was off character, off brand for her to be used in that way in Justice League. So yeah, I'm keen to see how Zach uses and Chris Terrier's writing for Lois, what her storyline is going to be, and what kind of dialogue she has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
We mentioned Wonder Woman, and Omesh was talking about Wonder Woman, how she relates to like Cyborg and some of the other characters. I wonder if we have other thoughts on Wonder Woman, because she came into BVS in a very important way, and she had these dynamics with Bruce and Diana, and how they played off, which I think was a great part of BVS. And so I'm also curious kind of what Wonder Woman's going to do this next film, because in BVS she kind of reluctantly came forward. She saw this threat and is like, you know what, okay, I do need to help out in this threat. And I liked the sort of repartee with Bruce. So I really want to see in Zack Snyder's version and Chris Terrier's version where that relationship between Bruce and Diana goes, just in terms of them kind of one-upping each other and Diana really kind of getting the best of him and stuff, as a sort of commentary on masculinity and stuff, that she was actually able to outdo him on all the stuff that he thought he was pretty awesome at. But also, I think Bruce and her can kind of join together in forming the team. Like, they can both realize that even us together, we need help. We need to bring some other people in. And again, this is something that's like, it's kind of in the theatrical version, like a little bit, but I feel like it's not the way that Zack Snyder and Chris Terrier were intending. I think they probably had more of a thoroughly thought out plan of how Diana and Bruce, it will further their relationship to have to bring this team together. I don't know, do other people have thoughts about where Wonder Woman might go, or where you hope to see her go?
Man, I'm getting more excited now about that. hearing these moments I actually forgot about. That they team up Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne or Batman to get the team together. That completely went off my mind. Like, I'm still thinking about like so many other things. This movie is going to be huge.
Yeah, that line where she says more and more less. Like, I really wanted to see that in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's an example of humor that's not cheap, but it's funny, and and that, so for people to say that Zach's movies don't have any humor in it, I think they overlook. I think they're expecting a different type of humor, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that dynamic is, and she's still kind of reluctant. So it's interesting because it's still following that idea that she's walked away from humanities, and she's sort of trying to accept man and rejoin the world of man, but she's doing it reluctantly. And the way they handled it in the theatrical cut was sort of half-assed.
Yeah.
In a way, they're like the mother and father of the Justice League.
Right.
It would be cool to see them, sort of have some romantic involvement, but I don't know if that was ever in the cards.
I wonder if it might just be alluded to, but not explicit,
I actually hope that doesn't happen. I don't know, just personally. I hope that there's nothing romantic between Bruce and Diana.
Well, I know that Zach had suggested the possibility of Bruce and Lois having something going on once while Superman's dead, or at some point. I think Eric Blake had mentioned the A on his 5-arc design. All the gods design stood for adultery. So there was sort of a hint on that. And if that's true, then obviously there would be no romance between Bruce and Diana. So, but it's definitely be interesting to see how Diana is portrayed, and that explosion that happens in the trailers at the bank. I'm very curious, what happens there. Do people die, or does she save them? That's something that leaves me wondering.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that action scene is going to have some similar action beats in it, but I think it's going to be different in the larger context of the scene. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Just to wrap up characters, a quick thought I had is with Cyborg, I do hope that it sort of aligns better with BVS. In terms of, we saw this glimpse of Cyborg, and I'm hoping in Zack Snyder's Justice League that those just synchronize quite well, because it doesn't quite work out very well in the Justice League version. And then the other thing I was going to just ask real quickly for characters, and then we can move on to themes. But what about the General Swanwick character? So he's in Man of Steel, and his perspective on seeing, Superman and coming to understand like what Superman is about is an important part of Man of Steel. And then in BVS, he's there as the Secretary of Defense and seeing the nuclear strike and stuff, and that Superman was willing to do that to try to save, the world from doomsday. So I'm also wondering could Swanwick be a part of this kind of trilogy?
Well, I mean, Zach has pretty much confirmed that
Swanwick, I should say.
Right.
So are people looking forward to, or what are you hoping for from that in Zack Snyder? Do you want to see that like fully realized with Martian Manhunter, or
what do you think, Omesh?
He is a member of the Justice League, so
founding member in most stories.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fitting that he would be there. And yeah, it does expand, like, it's thought-provoking because now he's also an alien, like Clark on Earth, and he's been alone all this time until Clark pitches up. And so, yeah, it does open up some, like, looking back at the previous films, you can think about what his role is and why he's moved into that particular role and what he's doing. And being a shapeshifter, he could actually be anyone in any scene, basically. So it opens up a lot of story opportunities, not just in the film itself, but also like tying back to other things.
Yeah, I've seen some people saying like, there was the article that Clark Kent was lost, at the end of BVS. And so you could use Martian Manhunter shapeshifting as a way to sort of explain and sort of show the world that like Clark Kent is back and Superman is back, but one's over here and one's over here. So they're not the same person, like that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Now you had brought up Cyborg again, and, it just occurred to me, while we're talking, I wanted to point out that his connection to the mother boxes is going to play a very important role, because as we've seen from some of the shots that Zach has shared, there's a whole sequence in Star Labs and how Steppenwolf gets the human mother box. And I think that's gonna be really integral to the overall story about his connection with the mother boxes. And I'm hoping that we're going to learn more about the mother boxes and the involvement of how they work and how they called Steppenwolf and all that. But yeah, being the heart of the film, literally both probably emotionally and in that he ties together the story. I think is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the trailer, I remember there was this one line where he flies and he blocks a tank that something is throwing at the police officer, and he says he says to the police officer, "You should probably move." And I'm wondering if that is like a callback to an earlier moment in the film where the police officer might have been harassing him, you know. So it's like, and you've also got like in his costume design, he has this hoodie like Trayvon Martin was wearing. So I'm wondering if there is some social commentary through the character as well.
Yeah.
Beyond just what we sort of seen in the theatrical cut.
Yeah, if there's an earlier scene where a police officer is sort of asking him to move along, like no loitering, which is probably like, you know, profiling him based on how he looks, of asking him to kind of clear the area. And then that would really sort of show the heroics of Cyborg to say, like, you know, I'm saving this police officer and I'm making this sort of comment that's a callback, but I'm saving you even though you've kind of been discriminatory against me in the past and against black people. So yeah, like those sorts of dynamics, I just really appreciate thinking about those and talking about those with other people, you know, and the theatrical version didn't have as much of that sort of stuff to dig into.
Yeah, Zach definitely touches on social commentary, especially in BVS. So I could definitely see that as a possibility at the very least.
Mm-hmm. And these the deeper ideas brings us into the themes. So that's the next thing we wanted to talk about here was themes and ideas that were explored in Man of Steel and BVS that we want to see continued into Justice League. So we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I'll throw this one out there first. Like we talked about the idea of unity or of finding strength in one another as a theme that could be explored. And we've also brought up kind of the idea of like the resurrection or the rebirth of Superman as part of Superman's arc. And so there could be this idea of like, you know, the world going dark, you know, and that's why, you know, Apocalypse senses the disarray and the turmoil, which is kind of timely in terms of the world now. Like a lot of negative things happening, a kind of a sense of despair. And so that opens up the world to, you know, negative forces coming in and taking over, right? But then Superman's rebirth could be sort of this like, no, like we're going to find the light. We're still going to find, you know, the good way forward, even from this despair. And the way we get there is maybe by leaning on each other, trusting each other, like actually coming together and supporting each other. And that could be the idea of this league kind of coming together and complementing each other. So just thoughts in those domains of what you're sort of hoping to see.
Ahmad, what do you think?
Like, not only that, like, do I want to see like how the characters complement each other? I want to see what each character represents in like thematically. You know how like in Batman v Superman, Batman represented someone that is like is so much in fear that he treads towards hating, you know, a person that he doesn't understand. So that's we have these people, like we're surrounded by these people in our lives. We interact with these people. Sometimes we are this person. Like we become Batman and Superman. What I want, like what I'm hoping to see in Zack Snyder's Justice League is what kind of like what would Aquaman represent? What would Flash represent? You know, what kind of connection to our real world would they try? Are they going to try to say? What messages are each character is it going to give us? You know, in terms of like our humanity or our view of the world.
Yeah, I think some of it could be this idea of you know, a person who has kind of isolated themselves in different ways. So I think there's a chance that Barry Allen has kind of isolated himself in a certain way because he's still dealing with, you know, stuff with his mom, and he's kind of just made his own little sort of, you know, place for him to stay, but it's kind of like separate. It's off the beaten path of like
almost
society.
like social distancing. You know?
He was doing it before it was cool, right? So he could be like one form of isolation. One, you know, Flash has this isolation, but then Aquaman definitely has an isolation as well. Like Aquaman's is more like that's not my problem. Like that's your problem. Like, you know, why am I responsible for that? You know? So that's another way though that you can kind of like put up a barrier for yourself. So yeah, I like what Hamad's saying here. Like we could sort of have different aspects of the human condition and the characters could sort of represent it. But then through the story, they have to break down those barriers and they have to find a way to like come together, because otherwise we can't get out of this mess that we're in, you know.
And that probably will play a role in Barry's connection to Iris. He probably, once he feels that sense of camaraderie with the League, you know, he's able to find the courage to, I'm assuming, to you know, approach Iris, because it seems like they don't know each other. And, you know, at the very least in the trailer, you know, he does say he needs friends. And I'm willing to accept that that's probably Zach's scene. So in that respect, you know, he may be awkward with Iris at first, and then eventually, you know, finding this strength in others, he may end up, you know, speaking to Iris and approaching her, and that could have led into his solo movie.
Right. And that also is reminding me too, like Batman's isolation is kind of an isolation of, I can do it all by myself. Like I will do all of this, and I've always been able to do it on my own. So that's a different way of kind of pushing people away, is like I'm just going to do it myself. And we can break through that and be like, no, you can't do this by yourself. You know, you need the other people. So I definitely think we're onto something here, where this could be multiple characters could show a form of isolation, which is just part of sort of like all of us. It could, like Hamad said, it could be all of us at any point. We have these tendencies to sort of wall ourselves off, and they each have to break through it. And that could be a really nice theme.
And in a way, there's also that unwilling isolation that Diana experiences from her, you know, her family in Themyscira.
Mm-hmm. Omesh, any thoughts on this idea of just the finding hope with the other people or unifying? Any thoughts on that kind of theme?
Yeah, I think you guys have discussed those things already. Nothing more to add from my side for that.
Yeah, I do think Cyborg is definitely very isolated, because his, you know, I don't know how much of this was Zach, but, you know, him being this monster, quote unquote, you know, or just feeling like this, if he is kind of secluded or if he's not really in society, then he's definitely isolated too. He's almost isolated because he's afraid of the way people will see him and judge him, you know, based on what he is, or they'll see him as a threat or something like that. And so that has made him isolated. So that's also another opportunity to kind of break out of that.
I'm just worried how much Cyborg is going to make me cry. Like, out of all the characters, yeah, I know Cyborg is going to be the one that's going to make me fall.
Well, I think
I don't know if I should be excited for it or...
He might make you cry both from sadness and from a feeling of inspiration, because,
yeah,
you know, if Zach follows through on the four-armed version that we've seen like a statue of and concept designs of,
about that.
Yeah, it may, you know, and Zach has said that he's supposedly the most powerful being out of all of them. You know, that sense of finding, you know, that inner strength and being something more than what he's perceived to be. I think that could be a very inspirational message that could also be emotional. Yeah,
with Cyborg as well, technology has become so important to us these days. It'll be very interesting, because he's a bit like Superman as well. You know how Superman can hear everyone in the world, potentially, and there's so many people crying for help. And Cyborg can tap into electronic devices. So, I mean, he could potentially have to experience the same kind of trauma of hearing all of these voices that he can't help. So I think it will be, yeah, it's bringing a tear to my eye right now.
I see. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When does this come out? The next theme I wanted to get your guys' reactions to was the theme that we've talked about on the Justice League Universe podcast, as going through a lot of the different movies. But it's the theme of, is humanity worth saving? And it's actually a kind of a serious question. You know, when you look at the planet and the environment and the way we treat each other and stuff, what's redeemable about kind of humanity? And you can think about different movies as asking the question, is humanity worth saving? And most of the movies kind of show you, and this is Wonder Woman too, this is even Suicide Squad, but definitely Man of Steel and BVS. The movies show you that like humanity does have some flaws. It has some injustices and some problems, but the answer is yes, it is still worth saving. And then each of the movies makes that answer. Like, yes, it is still worth saving. It's like Man of Steel, it's Superman choosing, even though he got bullied, even though he got judged, and even though it wasn't a safe space for him to sort of be himself all the time, he still said, like, yes, I am going to still actually save humanity and give them their chance. Wonder Woman, she chooses to stand by man because even though they have the darkness in them, there's also the light in them, so they're worth saving. And BVS as well, like, Superman sees some of the lowest points of humanity and what Lex was trying to do and turning the public against him and trying to put faith in humanity, and then them just like, turning on him and it kind of backfiring on him. But then he still says, like, you know what, I still see things. Maybe it's Lois, maybe it's, Martha and Jonathan, maybe it's just some other things that I have connected with that I'm still going to save them and give myself for them. To me, that could be Justice League as well, right? Because we have another threat to humanity, to Earth, like, and so you could say, like, okay, yeah, it's another superhero movie, it's another sci-fi movie with an invasion. But to me, these DC movies usually go deeper than that, where it's like, no, it actually is making us think about ourselves and what is worth saving about ourselves. But what do you see about like the potential for that going into Justice League?
I just want to point out that I think that this ties into that theme of unity as well, because I think that, while individuals are flawed, I think humanity as a whole is where our strength lies. Sort of at the end of BVS, when you see, if you seek his monument, look around, and that idea is that together as a whole, we are greater than our individual parts. And I think that's those two themes sort of tie together. What do you guys think?
Yeah, like I was gonna say also that maybe this is what confuses a lot of people with with what these movies represent. Like we're discussing unity and all that, but like others see it as like, oh, it's so dark. Superman is not smiling. Why isn't he saying like? But like if you think about it, like you said, like Zach showed what the world really is, and people assume that this has a reflection on, for some reason, is a reflection on Superman or the heroes in it. No, like this is the reality. We are assholes. This place is, this world sucks. Like, but is it worth saving? Like this is a question that, like, only DC and Zack Snyder dares to ask. To be honest, like I haven't seen a world portrayed like that in any Justice League animation or any like just the world that was represented was very like, okay, there's so much good in it, but maybe these small things, the bad things, will make it hard for it to to consider saving. But no, that's not the reality. There's a whole lot of bad, but there is this tiny little things that make it worthwhile, and this is what these movies are showing. And I hope this all ties in, like, to even like when there's an invasion from Apocalypse.
Right, and to
I think that would be even stronger.
Yeah, I agree with you, and to me it makes it more meaningful when they do save the world, because they saved it like with open eyes, with clear eyes about the flaws. Like Wonder Woman, like that's more meaningful because she saw the negative sides, and then it's more meaningful that she did save it. And same for Superman. Versus, yeah, you're right. In a lot of other iterations, the world is under threat, and the superheroes save it because, of course, they save it. Like, of course, they're supposed to save it. Like, that's the whole point. But in these DC, DCEU films, it's actually asked as a question, and we do look at reality like in its true colors. And then we have to decide, are we going to save it? So then to me now it's more meaningful when you say, yes, we are still going to save it.
And, a lot of these bad apples that exist in humanity that make us question, is humanity worth saving? That comes from our free will. And we know that Zach was going to touch on the anti-life equation. Mm-hmm. And, Apocalypse is sort of this world where people aren't permitted their free will. Dark side sort of reigns over them, and he wants to control life. So it's sort of a contrast for the potential sequel where he may be setting this up where, people, there is some bad, but it's worth saving, partially because it's bad because of our free will.
Mm-hmm.
And that itself is important compared to what, this villain wants to remove that free will.
Yeah, which goes right back to Man of Steel, that element of choice and free will is a big part of Man of Steel. So yeah, that really works as a sort of next step in the film series.
Yeah, absolutely. And a much bigger motif in the grand story.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see if we have maybe we can hit on another theme or so. What about the idea of this kind of question of how does humanity, or how do we react to gods being among us? And then if we want to make that a little bit more concrete, it could be sort of like, how do we react to these powerful forces that are greater than us, that are now in the world? And that's kind of been explored as well. Like, how does humanity respond to Superman, like alien life existing? How does humanity respond to, Superman and Doomsday as kind of two representations of this, like, scary power kind of. And now with Justice League, we have this kind of invading force, but it could also be that question of how do we respond, and also more heroes. So now we're entering like the age of heroes in Justice League. So how do we respond to seeing those forces like at play in the world, whether you think of them as like godlike kind of characters or just sort of like supreme powers or something like that? Do you see that as something that could be explored in Justice League? Maybe go to Omesh if you have thoughts on that, sort of the gods or powers walking among us.
Jumping back to the Wonder Woman movie, there's this moment where she saves the village and she's on top of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And this is sort of like reflecting what Zeus was on the mountain in the history lesson sequence where you had all the gods. But on top of the church, Wonder Woman is there by herself. And I think what Zack wanted for Justice League was for all the Justice League members to be sort of replicating the gods of Olympus, with all of them together. So in the Wonder Woman film, she's there by herself on top of the church, which is sort of symbolic of the mountain. And I think he wanted to go there with having the entire league. But I mean, I don't know how exposed the people are to the Justice League story. Like, it's unclear based on the trailers and also on the theatrical, the Justice League cut. Like, how exposed is the general public to what's happening? I'm just not sure how it's going to play out.
Yeah, that's a good question that we can just go into the movie. Yeah, I'm really interested in that too. And with Wonder Woman 1984, like, I'm also kind of interested in how public is all of this stuff and how well known is it?
Well, Suicide Squad sort of starts touching on that. I mean, it's hard to imagine that the world didn't notice, Enchantress's attack on the planet. But also, I think that BVS sort of lays the foundation for the world's reaction to these heroes, with the whole metahuman thesis, and sort of explains why Cyborg would be afraid of how people would react to him. So I think, go ahead.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, like, how the world reacts to Justice League when the apocalypse invasion happens, and how would they react after they save? Because in reality, if this happens in real life, all of us would be all over the Justice League when the apocalypse comes. But after this, they save us, we'll all be like doing thick pieces and talking and like, this is should we trust these people with Flash with the speed, and like, should we, should government come in? And I don't like Cyborg having access to my email, like. So, like,
well, people are okay with Google having access. But yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when there's that much power involved, it might be right to kind of question it when we're talking about that kind of level of power. I think it is a good conversation to have, like how much power should be concentrated.
Which is why Bruce questioned Superman.
Yep. Yeah. So one other thing, just about the trilogy, and this is something that I kind of care a lot about, but it's the music. So in the theatrical version, the music was a little bit different than we were used to, or that we maybe fell in love with Man of Steel and BVS. So I will just say I'm really looking forward to effective usage of like the Superman theme from Hans Zimmer, with just those kind of simple piano notes, the fifth, and to me that might go back to what I was saying about how I really want to see a do-over of like the Superman Clark Lois sort of thing. I also want to see it with the right music like in there, because just seeing Man of Steel and BVS and being really connected to those movies, it also is this emotional connection to the music. So I want to see that forward. Do other people have thoughts on sort of Junkie XL being able to kind of come in and do the score again? Do you have things that you're looking forward to in the Zack Snyder version?
First of all, I need to say that adding on to what you said, the music in Justice League, the theatrical, isn't just like not for me. I actually find it offensive what they did. Like it's literally like you hear Man of Steel, and you listen to the score from Batman v Superman. Regardless of how you feel about the movie or the characters, how like they didn't portray it the way I wanted to, but like just the music was great. It was beautiful. There's absolutely no need to change it. There's no reason for it to happen. Like, and they did doing what they did is just like it went under my skin. Like that's one of the most things that actually got to me. Like, yeah, there was that whole mustache thing with Superman's face, and like they changed almost everything to like a very insulting level. But that really got to me. That really, really got to me.
Yeah, I think people underestimate score in a movie. It really makes a difference and changes the feeling of scenes. And I think a lot of people don't consider that, but I think it's going to make a huge impact.
Like that's one of the main reasons why I think Batman v Superman is one of the best movies for me. My favorite movie of all time. It has a lot to do with the score. Like I could play the soundtracks, and the movie will just be playing in my head, just listening to it. I don't know exactly. I don't need to watch the movie anymore. I just play the music, and the movie is played in my head. And man, Zack Snyder's Justice League carries that kind of level of music. I don't know. I don't know. I can't even, like, I don't know if I can handle it.
And Omesh, I know you're a big fan of Wonder Woman too, and Wonder Woman I thought had a really good score, even though it wasn't Hans Zimmer with Gregson Williams, but I think a very effective score. Are you sort of hoping to see more continuity with Wonder Woman themes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've set up certain motifs in the film that I really like. I think Man of Steel is my second favorite musical score for a comic book movie. Joker is my favorite.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely love the Man of Steel soundtrack, the musical score. So yeah, I was similarly insulted by what happened with the theatrical cut. I'm very interested to hear what I think I heard that Junkie XL created individual themes for each of the Justice League members, and he obviously would have reused the one that he had for Batman from BVS and Wonder Woman, obviously. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what instrumentation he's going to be using, and like with Cyborg, what kind of sound is he going to be using? Is he going to be using like metallics? Is he going to be using like your brass, maybe like something metal for his theme,
or maybe even some techno?
Like, yeah. Junkie XL is very much into synth,
right?
Like
exactly,
synthesized. So it's like I think he's going to be doing something special. And yeah, I mean, who knows what his Justice League, like his team theme, because like if you ask anyone what their favorite Marvel theme is. The only one that they can probably mention is the Avengers theme. That's the only thing that they can remember. You know, like, I mean, I can go through all of these movies and I can hum individual themes
even
from all of them.
Right. Even Aquaman has, I think, a pretty cool theme that from his solo film that they could use if they wanted. So yeah, definitely just interested in it. And yeah, I think it will, like Hamad said, I think it'll make a big difference as soon as we're in there kind of listening to it. Yeah,
I mean, the score is so important. I think in one of the other podcasts, someone said that Zack Snyder considers the music as being a weapon. You know, like it has that potential to like hit you, you know? So it's like, and yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see how he uses the music and what Junkie XL comes up with. Because obviously he gets to see the film and then he makes the score like based on what is there, you know? So it's like, it's very exciting just to think about it.
Yeah. So let's open it up to just other things people are looking forward to, especially if it's kind of a continuation from Man of Steel and BVS into Justice League. So one thing for me real quick is the history lesson kind of, which I'm assuming might be at like the beginning of the film. But I kind of like that parallelism because Man of Steel, we have this prologue that's on Krypton, you know, and we see the Kryptonian sort of culture and stuff. And in BVS, we have this sort of flashback to like, you know, the Bruce Wayne's funeral at the beginning with the funeral of the Waynes. And so just sort of starting with sort of something that's important from the past, but it sets a stage for a really important just thematic development in the movie. So I'm sort of hoping for that, especially if it does parallel like Man of Steel, of having sort of a pretty meaty, lengthy sort of prologue, I think would be pretty cool. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. But just I'll open it up to other stuff that you guys are looking forward to in the Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, just building on what you said there, I think also I got vibes of the Lord of the Rings from the trailer, you know, like seeing the history lesson sequence, it reminded me of the beginning of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And if this was supposed to be a Justice League trilogy, it could possibly have started, like you said, with a history lesson, like a much more fleshed out history lesson. And I mean, the humans, there was supposed to be 3 factions in the history lesson: the humans, the Atlanteans, and
Themyscirans, Amazons.
Yeah. So like, I mean, there should be more to it. And obviously the prologue of the Lord of the Rings sets up the villain. And so it's like the villain is something that's severely lacking in the theatrical cut. So to actually flesh out that would be, I think, very important.
Yeah, I definitely am hoping for more nuance to Steppenwolf. So I know a lot of people are talking about the design of Steppenwolf, but I'm really mostly interested in the dynamics that I thought we were going to get of Steppenwolf being sort of like under the toe of Darkseid, and sort of, you know, Steppenwolf being one of the invader generals, but then also feeling like, you know, I'm also kind of oppressed by Darkseid, or some sort of like interesting dynamics between Steppenwolf as the villain on Earth, but also sort of you can see that he's underneath Darkseid, so he in a way is also oppressed. Like, to me, would be more interesting, something like that.
Personally, I have this feeling that it may start out, you know, sort of reliving the events of Superman's death, and sort of from there, you know, go into the Mother Box reaching out to Steppenwolf, and then maybe, because we know that Desaad is going to be in it, and so I think maybe, you know, from there we sort of are introduced to Steppenwolf as he's communicating with Desaad. And
so if it does overlap a little bit, that would also be very parallel to BVS, right, like overlapping with the end of Man of Steel. Yeah, that would be
because Zach had showed an image of Superman in Doomsday's hand, but from a different vantage point from what we saw in BVS, which sort of has led many of us to believe that, you know, it is sort of doing what BVS did and retelling that sequence.
And he did have Zack Snyder had some specific thoughts in his audio commentary about that scream of Superman, like when he's dying that scream was actually, you know, what kind of activated the Mother Box and stuff. So it's like Zack Snyder has thought in detail about that moment. So maybe it's because he was actually tying it right into Justice League.
Right.
Yeah. I've also heard someone saying that it might be Lois's point of view. So like if you do start with the death of Superman again, you might see it from Lois's perspective. And if she's like an important POV character, in the film, then it would make sense for it to start with her. And with BVS, you also had the 2 prologues. You had the death of the Wayne, and then you had the Black Zero event. So it's like there were 2 sort of prologues. So like you could have the history lesson and the death of Superman again. So he might decide to do it like that, but who knows how he'll structure it.
Right.
I like that. Hamad,
certainly if he depends on the medium, if they do episodes and versus film, that might play a role in how they introduce things.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to check with Matt if you have anything else. Just open it up that you're looking forward to.
Not like from recent developments now. Like obviously everything that you guys mentioned, I'm looking forward to. But like just from recent developments, like I want to see how Dick Grayson died, or like what his like, because apparently there's hints of it in Justice League. Right, so that man, so I'm really looking forward to that too.
Yeah, it makes sense if Bruce Wayne is having to break down his isolation and have to work with somebody else, and just like Gordon said, oh, you're working well, or you're good to see you playing well with others again. So like Zack Snyder one, he says like again, which means it's an allusion to you used to have a partner that you don't anymore, and they took out the word again for some reason. But yeah, I would be really curious about that. If they sort of bring in the like, I've had a partner before, it ended badly, that's part of why I walled myself off, but now I need to break down those walls. You know, Superman sort of started to help pull me out of that, and now I need to form other partnerships. So yeah, I think the Robin thing, it's not just an Easter egg for comic book fans. Like, no, like this can actually fit in with the character development and the theme of being willing to collaborate with people again.
I'm a huge comic fan of the comics, so any little like references to the comics, and I feel like BVS, sort of stood on its own as a solid drama, but I feel like Justice League was going to go all in with a lot of the lore, and I was really excited about that. I'm so looking forward to seeing Darkseid, so looking forward to Superman in his black suit, and what that entails, and then rumors about Green Lantern, just all these elements that are from the comics, just going all in. It's just, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and that's actually where we wanted to finish here quickly. We can wrap up. If people have things from the comics that might inspire the Justice League film, Zack Snyder's version, or if there are connections that you want to see to the comic books, so we can just add on to what Alessandro was saying. Are there things that you're hoping to see, or that just would be cool if you could see them in Zack Snyder's?
To be honest with me, like what got me into comic books, to get into DC Comics, is Zack Snyder's movies. It wasn't me like I'm a fan of DC Comics, and then like no, he got me into those. He got me like looking into like the lore and like getting more deep into it. So like and like I'm not hardcore into the comics as some of you are, but like there's one panel that comes up that I want to like. I'm pretty sure that it's I don't think Zack Snyder is gonna do it, but maybe something to the theme of it, like maybe just to piss off fans, like certain corner of the fandom, or certain bloggers or critics. There was this panel where I think it leads to Injustice or something like that, where Superman is fighting Doomsday, and then he wakes up and it turns out to be Lois, and he's like accidentally killed Lois. I think because of I think it's because of the anti-life equation. So something that with that impact, like I saw that panel, I'm like, oh, that thing.
Right. Yeah, I think in this,
like in Zack Snyder's, it might be like anti-life equation. I think in the other one, it might have been like some other kind of mind control that had him.
Joker had used some gas to conceive Superman.
So he was, but it could be the same thing where it's like you could have this moment of Superman did something and he didn't realize he was doing it, and then afterward, like the pain of hitting him. Yeah, like that could definitely be a connection. Yeah, for me, I'm thinking too about like. There was death of Superman kind of connections, but then Reign of Superman. So yeah, like Alessandro was saying about the black suit. But I also am kind of looking for, you could connect to some of the comic book panels and moments that happened of just also various people's reaction to seeing Superman back, right? Like the public, but also certain people, the characters, all thought Superman was gone and dead. And so for them to see him back, I think there could be some connections to comic books there about the kind of the reaction shot of like, wait, is that Superman again? You know, or Superman's back, like that sort of thing. I think could be cool. Like that could be played up, I think, way better than it was in the theatrical version.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who complain about Zack's direction are not familiar with Injustice, because he borrows heavily from that storyline, as evidenced by the Nightmare Future, which I'm looking forward to seeing more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
another thing,
something like Jimmy Olsen getting shot, is actually, people take that as just like, oh, that's stupid, he just shot him for no reason. But it sets the direction towards that Injustice future, that dystopian future. It's an important aspect that he gets shot, because it's sort of telling us, this is where things are going. So, and Injustice was a New York Times bestseller. It was a really popular story, but I guess some people aren't familiar with it, and so to see it on screen, they're not expecting it, and it's sort of, people are taken aback by it. But Injustice is actually a fantastic story. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting and well done. So to see Zack borrow from that is awesome.
Yeah. Another quick thing that I was thinking of too is Flash time travel, right? There's like dozens of opportunities to connect to various comic content and stuff of just of having Flash doing that thing. So we got a tiny bit of it in BVS, but I think depending on what they're able to do, I'm not sure, with Zack Snyder's Justice League or what they might be doing after Zack Snyder's Justice League, if anything. But there's at least some opportunities to have some Flash connections for the Flash fans out there for sure.
Well, my guess, just based on footage that we've seen, like in that final confrontation with Steppenwolf, we see Diana, Aquaman, and Cyborg sort of in the trailer land and prepare to fight Steppenwolf, but then in the theatrical cut, we only see Diana. And my theory is that that's not they aren't digitally removed for the theatrical version. I think that they were two different shots, and there is time travel involved where things change and cause things to happen differently.
Right, like there's maybe two sequences of events. There was like the first sequence of events, and then there was a second sequence of events. Like interesting.
Because Zack even mentions his favorite part is Flash running through the fabric of time. So
yeah. Well, I think, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this roundtable, but I'm also kind of like...
Well, I did have one last question. I wanted to know if you guys are actually familiar, like, I don't know how closely you've been following. Are you guys familiar with all these references that Zack's overall movie arc? Because I know he went into detail in Snyder Con, and he did mention, Flash's time travel. So I was wondering if you guys were familiar with that sort of long-term 5-movie arc that he sort of has hinted at, and how you think the Snyder Cut would fit into it.
I was thinking whether if it's still going to be the 5-movie 5-chapter arc format.
You think he would try to wrap it up?
Or maybe not really wrap it up, but more like it's going to be just a different format. It's not going to be just 5 movies. It's going to be something maybe bigger.
So you suspect they will continue it, though, you think?
I like my optimistic self. Yeah, I really hope this is the case. It's not just like that. This is a one-off thing. Then like no. They see AT&T and HBO Max. They see how much money this guy can bring them. It's not going to be just a one-off. Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that's it. I think it's going to be the whole arc that he wanted.
Okay. And how do you think the Snyder Cut will fit into that?
Yeah, it's going to be like, hopefully it's going to be like that's like the first chapter.
Okay.
of whatever it is like that he's trying to do.
Okay, what do you think, Omesh?
I think there was going to be like 3 Justice League movies, but
okay.
then they rewrote Zack Snyder's Justice League and the Snyder Cut to be a single film, which is ending on a cliffhanger. So it introduces, I think it's going to introduce elements of Apocalypse, but I don't think we're going to go there, not in this particular film. I think there will be some elements, but so this will be like a standalone film, but it will open the door for future storytelling. So, because Ray Fisher said that Zack shot enough for 2 films for his version of Justice League, and we know now that it's 4 hours long. So if we think about, typically his films have been like Man of Steel was 2 hours 23 minutes or something like that, and BVS was 3 hours and 3 minutes. So I think this Justice League movie should have been in that range. If it was going to be 3 individual movies, it would probably be like 2 hours 45 to 3 hours per film. So if he's going to make something that's 4 hours or a little bit longer than 4 hours, if it's going to be broken up into episodes, then that's probably sort of half of the story potential, but leaving the door open for future films. Other collaborators to make other Justice League or spin-off movies, or for him to do a conclusion in the future. So like, I think there's going to be a tease for Apocalypse, but I don't think it's going to be, I don't think there's going to be fighting in Apocalypse in his particular film now. But
do you think he had planned that originally, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was definitely part of the plan.
Oh, interesting. What do you think, Sam?
So for me, I'm kind of similar to Omesh, where I think the main thing is that we will get like more than a movie's worth. But then I think what's going to happen is they're going to just kind of like wait to see how successful it is. Like, is it, when it's available, is it just, spreading on social media, lots of people talking about it, lots of people raving about it? Does it bring in lots of new subscribers? And so if it's successful in those ways, then I think they'll be like, okay, good. Then we have this way of going forward and this way of going forward. So I think it's going to be that sort of thing of like, we're going to get more than a movie's worth, I think, and then they're going to just wait to see how it does before they decide whether they're going to fully follow this path or another path. Then to me, the other question is Zack Snyder and Debbie Snyder themselves, because I think, this is hard work and there's a lot that comes with it in terms of the stress and the, pushback and then all the drama. And then, even though there's those of us here that love their work, there's also a lot of people that give them a hard time. So to me, it's also this question of, do they want to spend another 4 years of their life doing this kind of thing, or do they have some other creative avenues that they want to pursue? So for me, there's kind of 2 questions of, one, does HBO Max greenlight additional follow-ups, which I think maybe they could, but it'll depend on the success. Then the other question is that handing it off to other creators, or is it actually still Zack Snyder and Debbie Snyder continuing on, with their creative team?
Well, I think if they do go with the episodic format, Zack could be the showrunner, and there could be different writers and directors for each episode. So in that respect, he could continue his vision without being as hands-on. So I guess we'll find out, and I think it's important for everybody watching and spread the word to make sure it's successful and it gets a lot of viewers and good press.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, we have to be very thankful to HBO Max and Warner Brothers, that division. So even though there's animosity and there's mistakes made in the past, there's kind of new people in charge. They have a new model with the streaming service. So I think, at this point, if we can help it be successful, that's going to raise the possibility of more to come after that. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much for being here. We'll wrap up this roundtable. Thanks to RT Snyder Cut for pulling this together, and it was really great talking to all you guys. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Alessandro,
yes.
Alessandro, thank you. You also have contributed a lot to this. I remember all your campaigns.
I appreciate that.
You've done a lot. You've done a lot for this movement.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. All right, guys. It's been great.
Yep. See you later. Take care.
Take care.